Hey there, Housers. Welcome to another episode of On the Way Home. I'm your host, Michael Braithwaite. This week's guest will not disappoint, as always. We're so fortunate to have such talented people across this country, around the world, stepping up to help us end homelessness, create affordable housing, and get people healthier moving forward. Before we get to today's guest, I want to tell you a little bit about my organization, Blue Door. Blue Door is an organization that for the past 42 years has been serving our most vulnerable across the top of the GTA in York, Durham, and Peel through emergency housing, through transitional housing, through longer term housing. We have a program called Inclusion that's pretty cool. It's been around for a couple of years for 2S LGBTQ plus youth, semi independent with supports. And we also have this really cool construction social enterprise called Construct that has launched over 400 people into the trades, and that's youth. Uh, we have cohorts that are fully female cohorts, which is super cool. We need those in the trades more and more so because it's been a male dominated industry for so long. We've had people that are struggling with addictions, and mental health challenges, and homelessness come through, and we've broken that pattern of the cycle of poverty because they get great jobs, they get a living wage, they have jobs with purpose. We surround them with care. It works, and it's been very cool. We do that across the top of the GTA, and in Durham, we do that with Durham College, and in Peel, we do that with Humber College. So great partnerships there. We couldn't do it without our friends at Leona 506, who do a lot of the training and give them some certifications as well. And with help across the country, the Home Depot Canada Foundation runs TradeWorks, which supports these types of social construction social enterprises across Canada and is launched hundreds into the trades so far. So thank you for your support on that. Let's get to today's guest. Today I have Andrea Nemtin. And Andrea is the CEO of Social Innovation Canada. We have a wonderful conversation. We talk about her journey into the work, which is pretty cool. She did a bunch of different things from activism to running her own kind of film production company into the work she's doing now. And it all kind of came together to tell the stories, to make action happen, the passion. She went into philanthropy. So it all kind of worked together to make her the perfect individual for social to be the CEO at Social Innovation Canada. We talk about what the heck is real social innovation and how often people will get invention and innovation mixed up or think they're the same thing, and they are not. We talk about some of the work they're doing across the country, some of the awesome partners that they work with, what has to happen in the future, her hopes for the future. We talk about how it's so important not just to have multiple solutions, but to really change the systems. Because if we don't change the systems, we're just band aiding things through. It's a great conversation. I think you'll really enjoy it. Also, go and check out the work that they're doing at Social Innovation Canada. But pay attention to what Andrea's saying because she is brilliant. I took a lot in, and I think you will too. Let's go to that conversation now. Andrea, so psyched to have you on the podcast today. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. How are you doing?
Good, good. I should tell our viewers sometimes our technology doesn't want to agree with us. Today was one of those days, and so thank you, Andrea, for hanging in there as I got my computer going and worked through the problems. We're going to ask you a question that we ask all our guests because it's unique to every individual, and that is, what does home mean to you?
Such a great question. So, at Social Innovation Canada, whenever we're talking about housing, we actually ask people first to think about home rather than units and what comes to mind for them when they think about home. And I'm now actually thinking about this a little bit differently and actually going further and asking them to think about what is a good home. We can feel at home in many places. We can make a home that reflects our individual tastes and dreams and hopes. Uh, it's really about where you are, but also about who you're with. For me, a good home provides safety and comfort, a sense of belonging and care, really.
I love that. And I love what you said there about, hey, it's not just about a home, it's about a good home. I think too often in Canadian society, sometimes I always talk about the good enough principle, right? Like we'll be like, hey, if we can get a better tent or we get a mat on the ground inside and do this, and it's that good enough that we saved a life, but that's not a home and that's not a good home. A good home is all those things you just mentioned, right? It's about the people around you. It's about that sense of safety and belonging. So thank you for that. Let's learn a little bit more about you. We always want to learn about our guests. I always say that usually, when in the lower grades, 2, 3, 4, 5, when they're saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" You probably didn't say this. Maybe you did, but most people haven't. How? Tell us a little bit about your journey into the work you're doing now.
Mm. I think in my like grade, 2, 3, I remember I wanted to be a dentist because I knew their jobs were really secure. It was really like I knew they got paid a lot and had regular hours. I began my career in BC really as an activist. I was running advocacy campaigns for Adbusters right out of university, actually while I was still in university, and they're really for the environmental sector. And I realize now that I'm dating myself, but that it's. I ran into Sephora Berman over in Oxford last week, and I realized it'd been 30 years since we were in the peace camps in Clayoquot Sound, really trying to save that old growth forest, her leading the charge and me kind of in the, in a separate, there's so many people working on that. Um, so it's, that's really where I started, I think I would say as an activist, but an activist that was using the tools of media to try and create change, to do some sort of culture jamming, as we called it. From there, I became an entrepreneur and I had a media production company. We did documentaries and some interactive, a bit of children's. We did that for about 15 years. It was still with an eye to social change. How do we create space for different voices? How do we tell historical stories in different ways from different perspectives? Often the projects were in collaboration with nonprofits. I think almost always, actually. And after that, around 2010, I started to feel very far removed from the issues we were making films about. And I also felt like television had shifted. It wasn't necessarily the best way to reach people anymore. Obviously, I think as soon as I closed my production company, I cut my cable. Or so there was definitely this transition. And so I shifted to philanthropy because I kind of wanted to feel a bit closer to the impact. And I became the founding CEO at Inspirit Foundation. So there I was really able to deepen my work in areas including reconciliation. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was happening then. We were working on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion really deeply. And then also impact investing was a part that around 2012 we started really leaning into. And in fact, we were the first philanthropic organization to have 100% impact investing strategy. And that made a lot of sense to me. How do you use these tools? So just as at Adbusters, we were using marketing and advertising tools, and with the impact investing, we were using finance tools. And so from there, we sort of stood that up. It was amazing opportunity. There's some money and a bit of vision and a board, and so we created this incredible philanthropic organization that's still creating amazing impact. But I know it's from a systems level that there were very few impact investing providers in Canada, if any, really. There was advisors and there was a gap there. And so I went on to help Purpose Capital transition into Rally Assets. And they were from the first, I think they were the first full service registered investment firm that focused on impact. There was others that had done some work, but not both the private markets and the public. Throughout all of this, I was always looking at things from a holistic systems view, right? Really looking at the whole system and focusing on one part of it. And I think the work that I'm doing at Social Innovation Canada brings what I learned from all of those different perspectives together and allows me to try and sort of pull together initiatives and approaches that do use that systems lens and do it with a real grounding in the front lines, really a grounding in understanding what it's like to be an actor in the system.
It's such a cool journey, incredible, and I agree with you. I think it all kind of pulled together and to where you are now. Let's talk about Social Innovation Canada. What is its purpose? How did it come about? What kind of things do you do? For people who
Yeah.
might not know, most people do, but some may not.
I don't, I mean, Social Innovation Canada, we've been around in a form or another for many, many years. I think around 2007, we started actually our journey as Social Innovation Generation, SIG. It was operating out of Mars. It was sort of a collaboration between Waterloo and McConnell and a couple of other players. And it was really designed to try and support the ecosystem and the approach and the actual practice. Um, from then, around 2018, maybe it was 2018, it started to wind down. It had kind of achieved its, it had socialized, it had achieved its work, its mandate. Um, but there was all these incredible resources and intellectual property and work that had been done, and the folks that were working in social innovation at the time just felt like that couldn't be lost with the wind down. So the work from SIG transitioned into what is now known as Social Innovation Canada. And some of the leaders in social innovation at the time, they went across the country and interviewed all kinds of practitioners and talked to them about what they needed. A very Canadian approach. We went to a constellation governance, a federated model, had nodes across the country, and they really imagined what would be next for SI Canada as a network. When I came on in 2020, we were really operating as a network in this sort of structure of people independently working across the country. We were aligning for action in terms of what we wanted to do and the impact we wanted to have on the country. But we didn't really have the structure to do that together yet. And so now I think of us almost as Social Innovation Canada, SI Canada 3.0 in a way, sort of SIG, Social Innovation Canada, that was incubated in the CSI Institute, and now Social Innovation Canada is its own charity, own national charity. And we do three things. We still support the ecosystem, a network of practitioners across the country, connecting them to resources, opportunities, and each other. In our strategic work, we identified that there are some areas that really need to be looked at from a national level. And this is what we heard from our partners that are in place and identity-based communities. They were hitting barriers, policy barriers, resource barriers at the national level. They still wanted to be connected to the work across the country. And so there's some issues that we'll actually have we have an innovation practice that we will look to address at a national level in partnership with place and identity-based communities. And then the third piece of work is more emergent right now, and that's on the actual systems change. What we found was that the solutions, we know there are solutions in community. We know if we do this national lab work, we can actually understand what solutions have to happen. Changes have to happen at the systems level or at the federal level for those solutions to thrive, be implemented, and grow and be sustainable. But there's work to do at the systems level to make sure that the system will nurture that. So those could be examples. Changes in policy. They can be changes in attitudes and mindsets. And they can also be changes in resource flows, whether they're national granting or social finance funds are often really great tools to support social innovations.
Well, the word social innovation is thrown around a lot, I think, or just even innovation. If you ask CMHC what innovation is, they might get a different answer than to you when you're telling people what is, and I won't hold you to social innovation to you. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, for me, social innovation starts with applying innovation to social and environmental challenges. But the differentiator is that it really looks to address the root causes. And in understanding the root causes of a complex system, I say causes, because it's not about silver bullets, right? Like we're looking at
Yeah.
these areas of complexity in order to create systemic change. So that's lasting and sustainable change. And these are the differentiators. Innovation is often conflated with invention.
Yes.
We have a new innovation, right? And then you think about how you get that to market. So with social innovation, and I think actually in innovation and traditional innovation, they're also even there really missing the link around incremental innovation. The people that have something that they're doing that they can do better rather than inventing something completely new. And with community, that's so important. Not that they can do better, but that it can be more supported because, as you know, people find the solutions because they need to in order to survive. Often working against the system, right? Often despite the programs and systems. So with social innovation, those are the big pieces. It's around the root causes, those impacted by the problem have to be involved in the problem definition. The actual innovation itself can be multifaceted. It's responding to a complex environment. We have a process of prototyping and testing. Then there's an like instead of taking it to market, you're actually implementing it in society. Right? It's almost like more of a diffusion. It's a replication. So like a social housing program, you can't necessarily scale that, but you can replicate it, you can diffuse it, you can support it through policies and programs and funding so that it will be successful and achieve its desired impacts.
I love that, and I think you're so right. The whole invention versus innovation, right?
Yeah.
So well said. I know you don't do this work in a silo. You have partners. Who do you work with on some of the projects that you do?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we started with a number of founding partners. So that included Radius out in BC with SFU. It was Flourish in Alberta. I think at that point it was called ABSI Connect. Um, Boldness, Winnipeg Boldness Project. Diane Rusin is one of our collaborators and one of those founding partners. The Center for Social Innovation, the Maison d'Innovation Sociale, and Inspiring Communities in Halifax. And then there was also the Social Enterprise Center in Manitoba. So those were our real founding partners. We then started exploring how we could be a charitable partner to other nonprofit initiatives. So Foresight is a very important partner. We have an important partnership with the Common Approach to Impact Measurement. So impact measurement's a big piece. And then our projects have a number of partners, whether they're government or corporate or nonprofits or community partners. So we've partnered with the CMHC, we partnered with ESDC, the Government of Manitoba. We partnered with Gore Mutual on a number of things. Um, we do everything. We also partner with universities because research is an important piece of all of this. So we try to do everything in collaboration and just fill in the little pieces between the collaborators.
Very cool. You're the glue. Let's talk about what are you working on right now? Social Innovation
Yeah.
Canada. What's exciting? What's happening?
Well, on our ecosystem building piece, we're really thinking about how you hold networks, and we're also thinking about the future of labs, the future of social innovation labs. So we're about to have a convening, and in fact, we just dropped a podcast from some of the folks that are putting that together on the future of labs. Um, we're doing some really interesting work on climate equity, and this is with Gore Mutual and York University on how how the impacts of climate are more adversely affecting equity-seeking communities, and how we can see that in a housing context. So how they're and how we can mitigate that, and it's really sort of linking to this challenge of folks becoming uninsurable. So this is like a big systems piece, but it's really centered on human experience. We're working on housing has been a big area of work for us. We also have this incubator, Earth Tech 2050, which has a big goal of reducing all kinds of gigatons of GHG emissions. Um, and and then the housing piece. It's a big piece.
Well, let's talk more about that because this, at its core, is a housing and homelessness
Yeah.
podcast. It's on the minds of all Canadians. As we record this today, the federal budget is dropping, and so lots of it's all housing all the time right now. Um,
Mhm.
what does it look like for to take a social innovation approach to our current housing crisis? What role does it play?
Um, so what role does it play or what role could it play? I can't say that I know what role it has played, but I can tell you what we've done. I can tell you what role I hope it will play. Um, the most important role, I think, is there's a term that they use in social innovation circles and systems thinking, which is called unintended adversaries. And that's the approach actually understanding the system can reveal that different people who are working in the system can be working at cross purposes. And so that's one of the most important roles that social innovation can play is to understand a system and then understand what the levers, create a shared understanding or a shared agreement to what the problems are, call that problem definition, and then to be able to see and identify the different levers for change and the barriers to impact. So for Social Innovation Canada, our journey around housing started in 2020 on a lab on financialization of housing.
Right.
I wanted to know how investing in how the way we invest in housing on the public markets and through our asset allocations was impacting housing affordability in Canada and across the world, but really we were focused in Canada. And the CMHC supported this project, as did the Van City Community Foundation. And so we did a lab, quite an in-depth look, and we worked with students from U of T on this and York on the impacts of the financialization of housing. The first step was to understand what it was in a way that actually people could, describe what it was in a way people could understand. And then
For
we
sure.
looked at and what we found in terms of the impacts. Uh, you know, it's totally reasonable today, but I'll tell you in 2020, in the fall of 2020, the term even financialization of housing was not one people wanted to hear very much of. And the idea that, just simple supply was not the answer to our housing crisis was quite controversial. What we found in financialization of housing was that the impacts had been to drive wealth inequality. It had been to erode the security of tenure for renters in this country and to dramatically reduce the supply of affordable housing units in this country. And they were unintended impacts. These were from solutions that were created and were successful at solving other problems. And so this is the piece that we always need to understand is that whatever solution we create today probably only lasts 10 or 20 years. Then we'll need new ones.
Yeah, and creating some of those solutions for creating new problems down the
Yeah.
line, right? If I hear you correctly, yeah, financialization of housing is so interesting. I mean, because many years ago, homes were not a commodity; they were just that's where you lived, right? That's you needed an abode. That's where you stay, and it's obviously it's changed so
Yeah.
much. Um, what are some?
Yeah.
Have you seen examples
Yeah.
of social innovation happening across
Absolutely. So
Canada in the housing
absolutely.
space?
So this that was our sort of the start of our work in there, and then we continued to support prototypes that would address these sort of in different communities across the country, and then transitioned into a very and we received extra funding to prototype a um, a social finance fund for non-market housing providers. So one of the challenges we saw, there was a number of different ways that could help to address these challenges. And one of the ones that we really leaned in on was was what are the barriers for us to increase the amount of non-market housing? So non-market housing is actually a sustainable um, a strategy that will create a solution that will be sustainable and perpetual. These are housing, this is housing that will always be working towards being affordable rather than creating profit for the investors. They do use financing, but it's not the ultimate goal is to create more affordable housing units. And so we found that that was the real place, and that these had to be rooted in communities, but they needed federal money. We needed more cash. We need more investment in non-market housing, and that the non-market housing providers had a very hard time accessing the current financing and the current funding programs. So we then took that learning and started a new lab around transit-oriented affordable housing. When we add transit development or any big social infrastructure development, all of the challenges around affordable housing are made more acute. The land becomes more expensive. The people get displaced. They tend to be in these areas, people in core housing need tend to be more concentrated in areas that are targeted for this development. So we have this situation where our tax dollars are going to improve the lives of people, and those people are not impacted in a positive way. So we started to really look at this, and we used Hamilton as a focus point for this because they're an interesting size city. There's a lot of cities across the country that are not Toronto and Vancouver, but they're actually sort of Hamilton size, and they're growing so fast, right? And they're bursting at the seams. And so for the last year and a half, we've been doing a transit-oriented affordable housing lab in Hamilton, and we're just about to pilot an initiative called Equitable Transit-Oriented Affordable Housing Enterprise. We might have to do a bit of branding, but essentially it's an approach to ensuring to interrupting this spiral of displacement and reduction in affordable housing units.
Very, very cool. And I love Hamilton. Hamilton's over the years. I mean, it's a great example too of a city that's transformed from where it was steel town, and now it is kind of reinvented itself and is growing rapidly. And with that, of course, comes challenges as well. Uh, what are your hopes for the future?
Mm.
With social innovation and with Social Innovation Canada, what are some things you're thinking of working on, or that you're kind of aimed at
Yeah, thank you.
shortly?
So for Social Innovation Canada, I hope that we can continue to demonstrate and support others to change the way we create change, right? To actually really try and support a different multi-sector holistic systems thinking approach that is embedded in goals of equity. That's my, and for the country and social innovation in the country, I hope that we can start to flow our research and innovation dollars to support and resource and address the challenges, the big social and environmental challenges, that without having money and minds and collaboration and all, we need to throw everything at this stuff, right? Like it's not that hard to make money, but it's really hard to create systems change. And so I hope that we start to have real missions that government and philanthropy and corporate Canada and the nonprofit sector and academia can collaborate together to figure out how to solve these challenges. Our journalism, how are we going to deal with this whole transition in our information systems? I think we have the opportunity right now to actually solve our housing challenge, and I'm really pleased to see how the government's responding. Essentially, if we're able to shift to 20% non-market housing and change this market from the bottom up, creating the supply from the bottom up instead of from the top down, this country will look very different in 30 years. And then we can figure out how to deal with our food systems.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, yeah, one problem at a time. And listen, we appreciate the work that you're doing and leading with Social Innovation Canada. If people want to find out more about what you do, they want to partner, they want to get involved, where do they find you?
Uh, we have sicanada.org is our website. We have a newsletter. We're on LinkedIn. Just connect. We want to hear from folks. Yeah, all the usual places.
Well,
SI Canada, socialinnovationcanada.org.
very cool. As one of those nonprofits that we're doing it now. We had a little house, or we have a little house, big piece of property. We're thinking housing crisis. We need to knock this down. What can we put up? We could put up 14 stack townhomes. That was, would meet with the town's requirements, but to do it, to make it happen, as you're saying, like it was so difficult. Now, and just the process, and begs the question: why is this so difficult? We own the land, we have $1 million we're putting into this, so the whole development, testing, getting everything ready, so we're ready to go. But to raise the $7-8 million, which is a drop in the bucket to most, to do it, it became incredibly hard. Now we've benefited from working with some great partners, but it was really hard. There was nothing out there that would meet the needs. When we talked to our friends at CMHC, they say, "Well, look, net new, you're only going to do 9, so we wouldn't pay for the 5, but we can't keep the 5 that we have and build around
Yeah.
it." So there's sometimes we
It's
get ourselves into these situations, right?
so ridiculous. I mean, there are so many times where you just go, what? And the thing to remember, Michael, is that just because you have a solution that is really good and makes a lot of sense and will solve the problem doesn't mean the system's going to let it happen. Right? Because
Yeah,
the system actually has to shift to be able to support the new solutions, to be able to support the innovations. And it's not any one person's fault. It's just that they're stuck, right? It's like turning a they're not motorboats, they're like ocean liners. CMHC is an ocean liner,
yes,
right? So good people all trying to do a good thing. They know it's not, but they've only got this tiny little piece of influence. It's not enough to make your project or your collaborators' projects happen. So that's when the whole industry, and this is what's been happening over the last year. I mean, it's been amazing to see everyone leaning in on this. And actually, and I think I'm cautiously optimistic. It's not going to be perfect. And the work that you do can't actually be solved just with financing. That's the other thing, is you need
no,
the right tool for the right problem. When we get to the point of supportive housing, we need funding, not financing. And we need stable
that's
funding,
right.
not financing. Um, because it's
And
actually
there's
health
examples
problems.
of
It's
that.
not it's not actually a housing problem, it's a
Yeah.
health problem. It's not always right. Like there's this there
Well, they're all
there
intertwined, right? So it's hard to stay healthy if you don't have a home. It's hard to get a home if you don't have good health and keep it. Food banks are only there because people, not only, but a large part they're there because people, we don't need more food. We actually need, if we could had greater incomes and affordable housing, people can afford the
yeah,
food that's there. So all these things kind of intertwine together, right? In these systems, and you're right. I mean, I think many times, we don't operate well in the gray, especially, and we can't when you're trying to. And I was talking with someone just before this podcast saying that we'll come up with a solution, but it's not a solution for all.
that's
And
right.
it's hard to get scaled and big. So we were talking about modular housing. Modular housing plays a part, but it's not the solution. That you can't
Yeah.
do modular housing for each, and there's not enough modular housing builders
Not yet,
to
right?
really,
Like we'll
not
get there.
yet, right? But
Exactly. And so
right now, that's not going to solve the problem right away. They're not going to build the 2.5 million homes modular that we need because they just don't have the
yeah,
capacity to do so. So we've got to think beyond one answer or the silver bullet, as you said. There's multiple different prongs to this.
every time someone says to me, I've got the answer, what about tiny homes and parking lots? And I go,
Yeah,
yes. And right,
Yes.
so it comes
Absolutely.
from, can we securitize mortgages from non-market housing providers? Can we create more flow into this system? Can we create ways of actually having that investment make sense to foundations that need a little bit of money and can't lose it all, right? Can we? And there's the
Right.
answers are out there. It's been done. You look in New York, you look in Denmark, you look in Singapore, you look in, Venice, you look in Quebec, or even in small areas out in, Union Co-op in London, Ontario, I think they are. We've got the answers. Now we just need to figure out where the system's getting stuck. Um, and trying to, like, when I grew up, I grew up in Vancouver. The co-ops that were created when I was a young, growing up there as a girl, they're still there. All of False Creek, right? Solar power co-ops, the beautiful housing, beautiful, dignified housing. What's gone is the wonderful halfway house for the Mental Patients Association, where people could live, autonomously with care in community. So I think if we work together, we can solve it.
Yes, and that's it, right? There's again not one solution and not one group that can do it. It's partnerships from all different sectors and all kind of angles. And I think I'm as you are, or as I hear from you, positive too, because so many people are attuned to this problem, are willing to step up, and you're seeing some non-traditional partnerships happen and making big things
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, listen, I want to thank you for your time and for all the work that you and the team do at Social Innovation Canada. Uh, People, check out the website, get involved, be a part of the solution. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to join us.
Thank you, Michael. Great to meet you.
We'll see you again.